Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Oregon State University President Jayati Murthy, and I am so proud to stand with President Schultz, WSU Director Pat Chen, and OSU Vice President and Director of Athletics Scott Barnes today. We are fiercely competitive rivals on the field, and as a proud member of Beaver Nation, I am cheering loudly for a big win for the Beavers on Saturday. But I will say that we stand united in our mission and our values and in our total commitment to our students, to our student athletes, to our states, and to our communities. With respect to the Pac-12, prioritizing the holistic health and well-being of student athletes has always been our priority. Our values are guided every step of the way by the voices of students, faculty, staff, fans, alumni, and supporters, and they're all cheering us on. I am so grateful for everyone who's spoken up on social media and to their state legislators on behalf of OSU athletes. They are depending on you, and we continue to depend on you to share your frustration, to share your passion, and to share your belief in these student athletes across OSU's 17 sports who demonstrated again and again that they deserve the ability to compete at the highest possible levels. This past year, OSU gymnastics team won the Pac-12 regular season title and had the all-around champion. Track and field claimed Pac-12's individual titles, and wrestling won the conference championship and had 5 individual champions. Since 2018, Oregon State is one of just 2 programs nationally, the other being Texas, to have its football team win at least 10 games in a season, have both its men's and women's basketball teams go to the Elite Eight, and see its baseball and softball teams go to the men's and women's College World Series, respectively. You are going to see the highest level of excellence on the field on Saturday, and I can't imagine a more worthy opponent than Washington State University. We are 2 top 25 football programs with some of the most dedicated and loyal fans in the nation. But more importantly, we are 2 leading universities that care deeply about our public missions. We are expanding access to the highest quality higher education. We're solving some of the world's most pressing challenges through scientific research, and we're bolstering local economies through extension programs and partnerships with local industries. These are some of the reasons we're so proud to say, go Beavs.
Thank you, President Murthy. And now we will hear opening comments from President Schultz.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Washington State University President Kirk Schultz, and really appreciate all of you joining with us today. Let me start by saying that while the current state of the Pac-12 conference was not a situation of our making, we refuse to let it define us. Oregon State University and Washington State University are both land-grant schools. We are charged with solving the thorniest problems facing our states. We will solve this problem as well. Both OSU and WSU are both top 100 public research universities recognized for teaching, research, and service. We are gritty, we're resilient. We've overcome adversity before, and we're not backing down from this challenge. We are united in our fight to find the best home for our athletics programs. We owe it to our student athletes, our coaches, our fans, and the residents of our states. We also owe it to our 2 communities, which rely on the economic benefit that comes from hosting premier Power 5 collegiate athletic contests. Ironically, this is not a case of 2 underperforming teams being relegated. In fact, these are 2 of the best college football teams in the country going head-to-head this weekend at a sold-out stadium on national television. Currently, both our football programs are ranked in the top 25. Our matchup this Saturday pits number 14 against number 21 in the nation. WSU is currently one of only 3 universities in America with top-ranked 25 football, volleyball, and women's soccer programs. Top-flight collegiate athletics are central to the student experience at both OSU and WSU. Make no mistake, we will not let that change. The situation we find ourselves in is exceedingly complex. The fiscal condition of the Pac-12 conference is far from clear. While the conference may possess some valuable assets, it's also burdened with some significant liabilities. Our two schools continue to seek financial records from the conference and are painstakingly reviewing documents to get an accurate picture of the conference's fiscal position. This has turned out to be more difficult and time-consuming than anticipated. Fans need to know that we are leaving no stone unturned. Together, WSU and OSU are aggressively pursuing all options. Staff from our two schools are meeting daily to explore alternatives and determine the best path forward. Let's be clear, WSU and OSU are in this situation not because of the quality of our athletic programs, but because of the size of our media markets. The legal action our two schools took earlier this month is just one of many efforts we are jointly pursuing. The judge's recent ruling to issue a temporary restraining order was a win for both our universities. It is critical that we clarify which schools have the right to make decisions about the future of our conference. Ultimately, we expect transparent and principled discussions with the departing schools to establish a just process and fair terms for their departure in all schools. We have plenty to discuss and looking forward to opening up for your questions and dialogue. Thank you. Go Cougs and go Beavs.
Thank you, President Schultz. And at this time, we will open it up to questions from the media online. As a reminder, when asking your question, please say your name and affiliation and who your question is directed to. We will start with Ralph Russo. Ralph, go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for doing this today. I don't know really who to direct this to. I'll just open it up to the field here. And that is, you talked about the legal action that was taken a couple of weeks ago. It seems like there has to be another move, another follow-up move on that. I'm wondering if any of you can update me or update us on what the legal strategy is going forward to determine who runs the Pac-12.
I'm happy to jump in. We're waiting for the scheduling of a preliminary injunction. That's the next step. As you know, there was a temporary restraining order issued in our favor. The next step is for the judge to schedule a preliminary injunction. That's when the hearing's supposed to take place, and we're waiting for the schedule on that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph. Next question comes from Kyle Bonagera of ESPN.
Yeah, I don't know who to direct this to either, but I'm just curious about what the timeline looks like in terms of when you expect to have some sort of resolution about what the next academic year's athletics calendar looks like. Thanks.
I can take that one. I mean, yesterday would be great. But the reality is the legal action that was just talked about really impacts our ability to make informed decisions. And we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our student athletes, we owe it to all of our constituents to make as informed decisions as we can. And getting to this asset and liability piece has always been critical in terms of making those decisions. So both universities, Scott and myself, we're working to go through multiple scenario planning with a whole bunch of different options, but when we recognize time is critical here, and decisions will have to be made at least for the upcoming year. And also the reality that flexibility is going to be critical for just based on what's going on in both of our campuses.
I just to add to Pat's comments that conference realignment is a tricky thing as it relates to our ability to share certain information. And as Pat said, we are scenario planned. The fact that we are waiting for some additional information does not mean that we haven't been focused every day on what that scheduling scenario might look like, and engaged in the proper conversations to make sure that when we do have that information, we're pressing go.
Thank you, Kyle. Next question comes from Nicole Auerbach.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. This question might be for the ADs based on the last answer here. But what are the minimum requirements needed to exist as a conference for next season? If you are able to go through all the legal maneuverings, but like, is there a number of sports that need to be sponsored or participating members? Like, what are those thresholds?
Yeah, I'll start and Pat certainly chime in. Nicole, thanks for the question. So, the thresholds depend on the sport. As an example, FBS requires in football 8 members, basketball 7, less than others. But the reality is there is also a grace period of 2 years as we think about our path forward and the multiple options that we're dealing with here. So those are all NCAA sort of governance questions as opposed to legal questions mostly. And we're working on that and are in tune to what those options could be.
And that is a 2-year grace period, cure period, whatever the term is, but based on the bylaws to maintain our FBS status, we technically the Pac-12 has 2 years to fulfill the membership criteria.
Thank you, Nicole. Next question, Dennis Dodd. Go ahead, Dennis. Dennis, go ahead. I don't know what's going on there. My apologies. Next question, Chris Vanini. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, for Pat and Scott, have you had conversations with potential media partners as it relates to next year as you are going through various scenarios? And what have those, if you've had those, what have those been like?
I'd maybe start by just saying that we do have a media consultant. We are absolutely game planning where we go. A little too early to start to have the actually engaged conversations in a room, but certainly identifying those we want to talk to and creating a plan with our media consultant for next steps.
And it's been a good exercise to really have a full understanding of the value of the brands of both institutions. It's clear they're national brands. Also the discussion on where we can continue to create value for our brands. So to Scott's point, those conversations are down the road, but in the meantime, we're doing a full analysis on exactly the value of the two institutions and really to the top, as we talk about media rights, media partners, it is hinged a lot around your football performance, and you have two of the nation's best football programs, and don't take our word for it. Look at how the coaches vote and the media vote for that.
If I could add to that too, Chris, I think we are astutely aware of the challenges right now in the media environment as well. I think one person said it's the worst media environment they've seen in 30 years for some of this. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're showcasing our value, but we also understand that, this is not an ideal market to be having those kind of discussions. But we still think we're two fantastic universities with, athletic programs that a lot of people can be proud of. So we're going to put our best foot forward, knowing that the environment may not be ideal.
Okay, next question is from Dennis Dodd. Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, I'll try this again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. A reaction from, I guess, anybody there to the emotion
Dennis, I'm sorry you're breaking up. We'll try again in a second. Hold on.
Oh.
Next question is from Nick Dashel. No, Nick. Okay, Greg Woods. Go ahead, Greg.
For you, I'm wondering, with volleyball and football and soccer all being ranked in the top 25 right now, what does that do just kind of for the excitement around campus? And two, How much does that help you guys build the case for whatever you guys want to see happen as a result of all this?
Greg, was that directed at me?
Yeah, it was. Sorry about that.
Well, I mean, we're very proud of the fact that Pullman, Washington is the only town, city, community in the country that on tonight will host a ranked home volleyball, top 25 volleyball program. Tomorrow we'll serve host for a women's soccer game where the host school is a top 25. And on Saturday football, we'll be hosting as a top 25 home opponent, and we'll bring in ranked opponents. I think in 2 of those 3, I think volleyball is the only one where the opponent isn't ranked, and that is University of Washington. So, we like to call this a normal fall in Pullman. So when you talk about what this adds, I think it just reinforces this is how we've operated. This is the type of athletic program that we've built. And there just happens to be more eyeballs on this football game specifically because it's 2 of the best programs in the country. But, we look at this opportunity on Saturday to really reinforce in this moment two extraordinary institutions. We're going to ask our fans that come Saturday evening, the only ask we're going to ask them is to make Giza Field the loudest, toughest place to play in the country. We owe it to Washington State, and we owe it to Oregon State. They're coming here because they're a top 25 program and they need to go prove something nationally. And we're a top 25 program and we need to prove something nationally. So, we look at this as these are the typical autumns or typical Septembers that we've had in Pullman. And we're fortunate that all these programs are ranked, but this has typically been the norm here, at least in my time at Washington State, this has been the norm.
I might add, just to be clear, that this partnership has been super strong, but it's on pause come kickoff for just a little while. And we'll get back to it.
I would, Greg, I would say too, I think excitement around Pullman is really high for Cougar athletics right now. Clearly us being in the news has generated a lot of angst though, within the community, within our faculty, staff, and students. Just, hey, what's next? What is it going to look like? Are we going to sort of lose part of our identity because of, where we'll land next year? But at least this is my 8th fall as WSU president. And I think we've got more excitement from our fan base than I've seen in a good number of years. But I think it's also people are uncertain about our future. And I think they just have a lot of questions because they say we're nationally ranked in all these things. People are recognizing the excellence of coaches, student athletes. How come we're even in this situation in the first place? And I think that's a little bit of why we're having this press conference today, to showcase our national brands as academic research institutions and top tier Power 5 athletics programs. But I think it's excitement about the success that we're seeing, but it's also some trepidation about the future. And JT, I don't know what you might say about Corvallis.
Oh, I'll tell you, there's been a huge outpouring of support. I can't even begin to tell you. I was in Eastern Washington, taking a trip out this whole last week. And my gosh, I mean, every town, every gathering, there's this huge outpouring of support. I mean, you're talking about people worried about their identity. In a strange way, this has actually knit our identity together and brought us so much closer to each other. It's been pretty phenomenal.
Thank you. Next question comes from Jamie Vinnick. Go ahead, Jamie.
This is kind of directed to whoever is capable of answering. Is there some kind of agreement right now between the Pac-2 and the Mountain West in forming some kind of a future going forward? And if so, what form is that taking?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that we've had very constructive conversations with their commissioner. There's certainly mutual interest in on both our sides on some sort of partnership. We're trying to figure out the shape and size of that as we understand Pac-12's own assets better. Let me throw this to one of the ADs because they've been in the trenches with the commissioner as well. So either Pat or Scott.
Yeah, I would just add that multiple conversations and looking at plans, you would ask if there's a signed agreement. No, there isn't, but that doesn't in any way, shape, or form suggest there isn't meaningful progress in our conversations. and that form, it's just too early to know what form our relationship may take, but we are continuing to discuss that.
Okay, next question comes from Emily Harris. Go ahead, Emily.
Hi, thank you for doing this. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. I have a one question for the presidents and then two for the ADs. For the presidents, what are you looking for as you're, hoping to get a better understanding of the assets and liabilities of the Pac-12? What are you seeking to know that would affect your decision whether to keep the Pac-12 as an entity or to do something else? Maybe answer that first, and if I could ask the AD question afterwards. Thank you.
Kirk, if you want to jump in, or I can. Yeah. So, well, I mean, there's, at the heart of it, the question of assets and liabilities. I mean, we understand some of the assets that the Pac-12 has, certainly the media payments, the NCAA tournament credits, CFP. Some things we understand pretty well. Some things we don't understand, even about the assets in terms of who the payments go to, who controls them, etc. And then there are liabilities. There are, the public legal cases that are going on, NIL, NLRB. And so we're trying to figure out how those are going to shape our view of Pac-12. And there's lots and lots of fine print and lots of other contractual obligations that the conference has. The balance of these will tell us what net assets actually exist in the conference. And we've got to understand that before we can chart out a path forward.
Okay.
Kirk, you might want to add to this.
Yeah, I think it's just getting clarity on all of these types of things. And, it's been out in the media pretty broadly about there's, a bunch of money here, there's a bunch of money there. And you add it all up, you would say, well, this should be pretty easy. It turns out with those liabilities, we've just got to have a firm feeling as we talk with the Mountain West or other prospective partners. People want to know what does that look like? And so I think our fans at both schools want answers sooner rather than later. I do too, but we owe it to our institutions to really do the due diligence just to make sure that 2 months from now, somebody doesn't go, well, boy, you made a quick decision. That was a poor one. I think our fans expect us to fight for each institution, understand fully what our options are. And I remind our fan base consistently, patience is where you need to be right now, even though I know there's that uncertainty. We're going to continue to exercise our due diligence and take our time, understand assets and liabilities, and then maybe some doors get shut on what the future looks like on certain partnerships, and maybe others are open, but we've got to have that full picture. Now, I don't think it's going to take us months to get the full picture. I'm optimistic that, in the next 30 days or so, we're going to have a pretty decent idea of a lot of this, and that'll help our decision-making and our legal strategy.
Okay, thanks very much to both of you. For the athletic directors, I'm curious how you feel the situation is affecting recruiting right now. And then also, could you say anything about how you look at San Diego State if you're continuing conversations with the Mountain West? Would that be a school you would target to recruit into the Pac-12, for example?
I can jump into the recruiting piece. One, I mean, it's no secret the whole recruiting landscape is very, very challenging in general because of NIL, because of the portal. This just is another layer of unclear information that our coaches don't have. So it's the realities of recruiting. We're not, at Washington State, we just had a coaches meeting and we talked openly about how tough, just how the recruiting environment is in general. This on top of it is another challenge that we'll have to figure out and we recognize, to Kirk's point, we're going to have to get to some type of decision sooner than later because of the recruiting piece, but it's challenging. But you'd also, ultimately we have coaches that understand that, and typically we'll figure out a way to work through whatever the challenge is.
I would just add, and then I can certainly answer the second part of the question, that yes, it's a difficult time as it relates to recruiting. That said, as we talk, and we talked again in our all staff meeting this morning, is leaning into who we are, the leadership of our coaches, the values we have, and we're seeing real significant wins in the recruiting area because of what we stand for and who we are, and that doesn't change. Both presidents spoke eloquently about the quality of our universities, and student athletes first and foremost want to know that they're comfortable in the space, that they have a path forward. Recruiting as it relates to conference realignment is really important. Is it the most important thing, conference realignment? Not always. As it relates to your question about members, we are vetting all sorts of opportunities here, and doing that in behind the scenes. And so to actually start to call out prospective schools in terms of what this all could look like, I wouldn't do that. But I would just tell you this, that the quality of the brand, of the market, of the product is super important to us as we think about our path forward, not just in the next year or two, but beyond.
Thank you. As a reminder to media, when you ask your question, please let us know your affiliation. Next question comes from Demi Lawrence. Go ahead, Demi.
Hi all, Demi Lawrence, Portland Business Journal. This is directed at President Schultz. Earlier you mentioned that the fiscal condition of the Pac-12 was far from clear. I think, please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but if you could dive into that a little bit deeper, and if anybody else, President Murthy, if you also have a comment on that, just kind of if you could expand on what you meant by that a little bit and what the future holds for that.
Certainly, I think it's been well documented in the media that there's a continuing dispute between the Pac-12 conference, for example, and Comcast over distribution dollars. There are other types of legal things that, again, have been well documented with former employees exercising lawsuits. I think we've got one of our bowl partners also is still working with us on what happened during COVID with a school not, showing up to play. We've got a bunch of these different sort of things that are floating out there that all carry, legal and fiscal risk on dollars that need to be paid. We also have, conference revenues coming in from a variety of different sources, our media contracts, our bowl partners, President Murthy mentioned around the NCAA units and so on. So what we have to do is we've got to comb through contracts, understand dollars when they come in, and are they designated in a particular form or fashion to be distributed in a certain way. And when you're operating the conference where nobody's leaving, these are probably not the things that, as a president, I would pay much attention to. Your commissioner just does that, and that staff operates it, and you just don't dive into the maybe intimate legal details around each of these fiscal notes and issues. Now what we have to do is, with where we're going to be moving forward, we have to understand the details on this and not just the high level piece to it. So our chief financial officers at the two institutions are working closely with the legal teams and their colleagues at the Pac-12 simply to get more of this information and make sure we understand not just where we are today, but where we might be when the other schools depart, and what next year could look like in terms of assets and maybe some liabilities and things that we have to pay. Then the networks recently, the Pac-12 network moved to a different location, went through some renovations, put some things together. We need to understand that asset and its value in the marketplace and the future direction of the Pac-12 network. So when we talk about the assets and liabilities, it's not just a spreadsheet, it's understanding some of the intangibles as well, and using subject matter experts to help us evaluate how those can be used moving forward. Jaithi, what would you add to that?
That's excellent. I think you summarized the big bits. The only piece I would add to it is also the cost of running the conference is changing too, because as you know, we just approved a new retention plan. And so what we pay to retain whom, all of those costs are changing as well. So, so we've got to look at both sides of the ledger to figure out what resources there actually are for us to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question comes from Larry Stone. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, hi, Larry Stone, Seattle Times. I wanted to ask specifically about the game coming up on Saturday. There's obviously this unity that's built between these two institutions that is reflected here today and has been, and as you fight for your future, and yet you're facing each other in this very competitive game. You kind of alluded to it early, but how do you balance those two facts? And is there going to be some show of solidarity on Saturday between the two programs, even as you try to beat each other?
Yes, of course. I'm going to be biting my nails to the quick. I'm a very nervous watcher. But, there's a little bit of Cougar in me too. I got my master's degree at WSU. So there's that. But no, we'll fight hard. We're going to play hard. But at the end of it, this is what college athletics is all about. We are partners in the whole big higher education enterprise. We have the same goals, and we all recognize that.
And I'll add, I mean, these are the best parts of college football, what's on Saturday. We have a bunch of young people that want to compete on the biggest stages amongst the best competition. And that stage is provided on national TV because you have two ranked opponents playing. It'll be a great football game. They're two well-coached teams, two coaches that have built their programs and the reflection of who they are, ultimately through the values of what the institutions they represent. So when you talk about what Saturday means, it is football at its highest level. And it goes back to the questions that are surrounding the two campuses. It is inexplicable that these two programs are in this situation when the thing that was always said you have to win at, now both schools happen to be winning at a lot of different things inside athletics and outside of athletics, but the stage is in Pullman, Washington. The opponent is a top 25 Oregon State. It's a Pac-12 conference game, and you're going to see a great football game on national TV. And there's not a lot of schools that have these types of options. Year in and year out.
I just can't think of a better way, if we have to be in this situation, to be on a nationally televised game between two ranked schools and just all the eyeballs and interest that it generates for our two institutions. So it's not the situation we wanted, but if we have to be here, I can't think of a better storyline and the way that it's playing out. And we don't do ties anymore. So obviously I'm hoping for a Cougar win. JT's hoping for a Beav win, but we're going to be cheering for each other the rest of the season. I think it's gone viral on social media, right? When the Wisconsin score was announced, and we had a big roar from Oregon State fans. I think both schools are, they both want to win this game, but I think both are going to be cheering hard for each other to say, let's maybe meet in the championship game again with a Pac-12 title on the line at the end of the season. I can think of nothing better.
All right, thank you. Next question comes from Nick Daschel. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize if this has been asked before because I got bumped off here, but this is for President Murthy or Scott. Have there been any discussions about increased institutional support for athletics or the state support for athletics, regardless of what happens with conference going forward?
Yeah, we're certainly talking, because the financial impacts on both us and WSU is so high. I imagine we're all looking at multiple sources of funding, and that includes, of course, institutional support, state support, philanthropy, and so many other streams. So those conversations have been had, are being had. We've had good conversations with legislators. Some of you may be aware that there is a hearing of our House Higher Education Committee on September 28th at 2:30 p.m., where the committee will seek to figure out what's happening, how did this come to pass, and what the impacts on OSU are, and also the impacts on the communities that surround OSU. They'll have lots of interest in the plight of our student athletes and how this is going to impact them. And so those conversations are happening right now.
Thank you. Next question, Jerry Brewer.
Hello, it's Jerry Brewer from the Washington Post. I wanted to direct this question first to the ADs, but also if the presidents might mind chiming in as well. I'm curious to know, I mean, obviously you've been partners for a long time in a conference and regional rivals and all that, but now as a duo, what have you learned about each other? What do you appreciate about each other?
I would say that what we thought about each other just has come to full light. We're very similar from the land grant mission to our values. And when you're in a fight together, you're in sort of the foxhole together, you do learn a lot more. And for me, it's confirmed what I thought about the Cougars. And you know, our fan bases have always cheered for each other because of that, some of the commonalities that I've mentioned. So for me, I think what's important, what's critical now is our values and how we navigate this. And there isn't any question that we're aligned in our values and our goals.
I learned Oregon State is a land, air, and sea grant institution. Is probably the one factual thing I learned about Oregon State. But to Scott's point, I mean, this is about shared value, shared purpose, and really fighting for two institutions that continue to do things the right way, that have built their athletic programs the right ways, that graduate student athletes have high grade point averages, and are true reflections of the land grant mission. You know, a decision has been made about these two institutions based on TV market size, yet there's a land grant mission here that both schools are seeing to its fullest. So as we go down this path, I mean, it's really about, you know, I would argue this is what's really good about college sports. This is what's really good about college communities. We'll continue to fight for them. There are changes on the horizon in college athletics. The market's going to continue. There's market corrections that are on the horizon with conference realignment and where dollars are going. And we're seeing the TV market change right before our eyes. But you know, when you talk about these two institutions, I mean, these are two institutions that are going to continue to fight for you know, Cougs and Beavers.
Yeah, I want to pick up on something that Pat said, all right, and that is the whole land grant story. Now, land grant institutions were set up deliberately in small communities, all right, and both WSU and OSU represent rural communities in our respective states. We've got lots of students from these communities, and you know, I find it stunning that we're just willing to give away the athletic opportunities that these students can have just so easily. You know, we owe it to our rural students to give them every opportunity, every, academic and athletic opportunity that everybody else gets from the big cities. And so, so to just write off small communities like this is just completely unacceptable in my view.
You know, I think we value being in the Pac-12, and when we had a full complement of 12 schools, I think we sometimes spent too much time looking at UCLA and USC and other schools like that, and our sister institution that was in the state right next to us with a lot of similarities. Sometimes we just didn't think as much about the partnerships that we could have had with Oregon State at times. So if nothing else, one is pull the two institutions closer together. We have faculty at both institutions that do joint research together, and especially in ag and winemaking and a whole bunch of things like that, and have for a long time. But I think probably there's a reality that there's a lot more things we could be doing together, certainly academically, joint proposals and other things. So I do think it's caused us maybe to refocus a little bit on a sister institution and figure out some ways that we can continue to do things, together, not just athletically, but academically, and benefiting both of our states.
Thank you. We're going to try this again. Dennis Dodd, go ahead.
I believe I'm in.
You are. Go ahead, Dennis.
That's great. You're taught to never be the story in this business, so I apologize. This is for the ADs, and I've got a quick follow-up. You guys do budgets pro forma years in advance. I just wonder what you're putting down right now for future years for media rights revenue.
Yeah, that's yet to be determined. I mean, I think in every aspect of revenue, whether it's media rights, total distribution, our own self-generated revenues, or the conversations that have been had about both assets from the Pac-12 and institutional support, those are all discussion items, and we're looking at them and we're evaluating them using our content experts to help us. But as it relates to a specific number, we're not there yet.
Same at Washington State. It's to be determined.
Okay. And also just a general reaction from the relegation promotion model that's out there from Boise State. Any interest in that, particularly in the way it's set up? It would, disrupt other conferences and put those in the same situation that you guys find yourself in now.
Yeah, I'll let Pat chime in too. Generally speaking, let me comment on a relegation model or a hybrid form where those that are investing, as an example, in the product, football in this case, at a high level, would be playing each other more often. I think as you think about the future of even media rights, I think a sort of relegation model, either an unequal distribution, a contraction of teams, and or peer relegation will take place. I think that's coming. In terms of the model itself, I think there's some merit to look at some form of hybrid model that does support that. We see it working in a similar fashion in Europe, and certainly it's worthy of our study.
I would agree with Scott. Change is going to be constant in college football, and we just watched it with current, soon to be former Pac-12 schools take media distributions at 50 cents on the dollar compared to their peer institutions that they're going to, some $0 to 30 cents on the dollar. To Scott's point, how dollars are distributed amongst conferences has changed literally overnight. It's been very clear that TV looks at college football as an inefficient purchase, and college football looks at TV as they are focusing on big brands right now, or what they deem the biggest brands, and things are changing, and the model is going to change, and college football is either going to have to adapt to that or create a different type of model, different total model, but change is on the horizon. I have not studied that Boise model, but I've said it over and over. Oregon State and Washington State would not be subject to relegation in a relegation model, because I don't see a model where 2 top 25 programs would be relegated.
If I could, Dennis, I think there's lots of folks right now that are suggesting that the way because of all this conference reshuffling, that the way we handle college football is just sort of broken. And there's lots of really good ideas out there about how it could be restructured. As my engineering background, I'm also a pragmatist, and know that if schools can't figure out how to get out of a grant of rights in a conference, I don't know how you practically move to these particular models that you could even get a lot of people to sit around and agree to. There's going to have to be some other disruptors that are going to force it. And I just not sure we're going to see a lot of movement in this space in the next 4 to 5 years, just because people are locked down into particular media contracts. And as much as I consider Washington State a leader in things, it's when other maybe more prominent brands say, hey, we got to start looking at a different model, the Ohio States, the Michigans, Alabamas, Georgias of the world, schools of that stature in football, when they start saying, hey, it's time to get together and change something, then I think we certainly want to be in that conversation with great ideas. But I just think practically, we can all come up with something that'll be better than the way it's done today. I just don't see a great, easy pathway to get there without a major market disruptor coming in with a lot of financial resources to say, let's do something different.
Okay, our next question comes from Tim Booth. Tim, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for taking the time. Since Dennis just stole the question I was going to ask about relegation, this is probably for Pat and Scott. Now that time has settled a little bit since the decisions of the schools to leave, have you re-engaged with Washington and Oregon about continuing the rivalry series moving forward, and especially with your scheduling uncertainty for next year, where do those conversations stand right now?
Well, I think we're all, I mean, Scott and I have both taken, and our staffs have taken the deep dive of scheduling across all sports. There'll be a time and a place where we'll make some preliminary decisions on what scheduling has to look like. But like I've told all of our constituents here at Washington State, we cannot look at scheduling in the future with an emotional lens. We need to look at it through a business lens. There are significant dollars associated with television. On our side of this equation, we've been a part of a storied rivalry. I know Oregon and Oregon State have been a part of a storied rivalry, and we'll have to make some decisions based on other factors beyond emotion whenever that time comes.
I would just add and echo Pat's sentiments as it relates to the business aspect, but there's another aspect vitally important, and that's the student athlete wellness piece as it relates to all of our sports. And regionality is an important factor when you think about student athlete wellness. So certainly no decisions on our part have been made. There's so many aspects and things that we need to get through. But I will tell you that regionality is an important component of the holistic experience our student athletes have.
You know, if I could also give some color to this, and JT may want to as well. I am in communication with President Cal State, University of Washington. The public university presidents meet every other week in the state of Washington to talk about student access, loans, what we can do to advance the state of Washington. And those conversations have to continue. Do we want to talk about, athletics and rivalry and the Big Ten Conference? No. But I also think we owe it to the citizens of the state to be working together on academic related issues that are important for the two R1 institutions in the state to be working on. So, does it color the relationship? Absolutely. I think, it would be silly to claim it doesn't. But on the other hand, the citizens of the state expect us to making sure we're doing what we can for prospective students in Washington, and we're going to continue to operate in that fashion. The athletic conversations, I'll allow Pat to have that with his counterpart at UW, and I'm going to stick with things like how we can get our FAFSA rate up in the state of Washington, working collaboratively.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly shared, research imperatives that we are certainly partnering on. I would continue to expect our faculty to work together. And there are, deep issues related to the funding of higher education that we've got to be working jointly on. Student success is another big issue, connection to community colleges, which we all share. So there's many, many parts to the shared endeavor. But I will be blunt. I mean, this hasn't helped. This has been a true problem because, we are both in the state of Oregon, public universities. And, if this kind of action damages our financial standing, that's a problem. I can't, talk past that. I can't look past that.
Thank you. Next up, John Wilner. Go ahead, John.
Thanks for doing this. I'd like to ask the two presidents if you could characterize Commissioner George Kliavkoff's approach to dealing with the two schools over the last 6 or 7 weeks? Has it been supportive, adversarial, suitably neutral, something else?
I don't know that I would call it adversarial. I do recognize, though, that the situations of the 12 schools is not the same. 10 are leaving, 2 are remaining. And of course, George is in a difficult situation in terms of figuring out what his stand is with respect to such a divided conference. So I know that his job is not easy. But the fact remains that the 2 schools are the only ones that remain. And so our assertion has always been that we are the ones who need to determine our future going forward. And yeah, I recognize that he's in a difficult situation there.
Okay, next question comes from Brenna Green. Brenna, go ahead.
Brenna Green, Coin 6. I would say that it's probably never happened before that 2 schools, presidents and ADs have had a joint press conference before a college football game that week. I guess it's just kind of for the floor. I mean, just for anybody who wants to answer, just I guess, what is it kind of like being in this moment for you guys? Is it bizarre right now? Could you have imagined having this going down just a few months ago?
No, it is, this is having a joint press conference with our colleagues is certainly something that doesn't feel that unusual. But, the whole idea of a conference that has been around for over 100 years, literally self-destructing in an afternoon is not anything that's in any book that you go look at. So while I'm glad that we've gotten to work with our Oregon State colleagues a lot more, this is just certainly nothing that any of us foresaw moving ahead. And I've heard from other presidents all over the country, former people I've worked with. I'm sure Jathy has as well, going, man, this sucks. I feel for you guys. I've gotten more of those messages from virtually everywhere around the country. Some of the very largest athletic programs and most prestigious universities in the country. Everybody's kind of watching to see how we handle it and what types of things we do, the impact it has on us as an institution, the impact it has on us working with our counterparts in the state. And I think Jathy mentioned, that it strains those relationships. And so I suspect 2 years from now, I'll be able to be more analytical about it and maybe a little less irritated, pissed off, talk whatever you want. But, right now it's just hard. You don't see the future. You got upset fan bases. We've got great coaches and student athletes that have committed to each of our institutions to, do their absolute damnedest to compete hard in the classroom and on the field. And that uncertainty is just really, really difficult. So all I know to do is pick a pathway, move forward, be flexible, be resilient, and be patient. And that's what we're going to do.
I'll just add the entire college athletics ecosystem is dynamic. The 4 of us would wholeheartedly prefer pre-football press conferences involving student athletes and coaches and not the 4 of us. It is, but it's also an opportunity. I mean, it was a unique week as we think about ways to elevate this game. I mean, although we're asking our Coug fans to make it the toughest, loudest environment, we're also going to encourage them 18 minutes before kickoff. Our band's going to play the Oregon State fight song, and we're going to ask, as a show of respect, to applaud that fight song because the 2 universities are in a fight together. And I know our 2 mascots are probably going to interact more than they ever interacted. Really, as symbolic of the 2 schools going down this unique road together. But no, this is this is not in the textbook for either how you run an athletic program, but it's also I think, from the Washington State side, I think we also know that we're fortunate to have 2 partners and friends that ultimately are working together toward a common solution.
Thank you. Chris Daniels, go ahead.
Thanks, Bill. Chris Daniels, Como News in Seattle. Thanks again to the 4 of you for doing this. I did hear President Schultz, you say that within the next 30 days or so, you're going to have an idea of what you're going to do. But what is the realistic deadline here, just from a scheduling aspect? What is the cutoff Because I don't think anybody thinks you can get to February and decide, okay, we're just going to play each other 12 times a year and call it good. I mean, what is, from a scheduling aspect, the absolute cutoff here to figure out what you're going to do going forward?
I'll let the ADs answer that, but Chris, we got to play an odd number of times so that, one of us in football, maybe it's, best of 12, best of 13 games or something. So I'll let Pat and Scott give you a legitimate answer.
Chris, your question was a cutoff date. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
Yeah.
What is your absolute cutoff date here to figure out what you're going to do in 2024?
Well, the challenge is I don't think we're living in absolutes. I think there's practicality things that we recognize that we're behind the eight ball with, and there's going to be a time and a place where decisions are going to have to be made. But we're just going to have to load ourselves up with as much information and as with many options as possible. I mean, we're going down a path where we're trying to be responsible to our institutions. Know that creativity may be something that may enhance what our opportunities may be, but there's a lot of what ifs now. But I mean, we recognize it is on the horizon. When exactly? I mean, it's on the horizon. We're going to have to get to some decisions.
I would echo that. It's to draw a line in the sand on the absolute date, not yet. Certainly this fall, we do know based on our modeling and our conversations with the content experts that we can put schedules together as late as late fall. We don't want to wait that long. We want to move as quickly as we can in an informed fashion, as we've discussed, making sure we have all the details. So lots of concerns as it relates to kind of moving forward. But I would say that as it relates to scheduling, we are confident we can put a schedule together for all sports in a timely fashion that meets our needs for 2024-25.
Thank you. Next question comes from Brian Fisher. Go ahead, Brian.
Question for Kirk there. What's kind of been the tenor of the conversations you've had with the CFP Board of Managers? And ultimately, do you anticipate the Pac-12 receiving a Power 5 share of the CFP revenue these final 2 years of that contract?
Well, there hasn't been a lot of discussions between the presidents that sit on that about where we are, but things were modified a year or so ago with the expanded playoff. So it really kind of identified the schools as opposed to the conferences. So we both expect both Oregon State and Washington State to receive our per school distribution from the college football playoff for the next 2 years, just like we would have previously. I think the question becomes the out years, and I think we want to continue to position ourselves as a Power 5 schools, and that we think we need to make sure that we're securing some position at the bargaining table when that expansion, not whose the schools are there, but how the financial pieces are going to be distributed as part of a new media rights agreement. And I fully expect that on the board to be part of those conversations representing the Pac-12.
And then just to follow up to John's question earlier, the approved retention plan that you guys approved last week, did that include George Kliavkoff beyond 2024?
I'm not sure. I should check. I believe it. I don't know if there was a direct line with respect to that.
Commissioner Kliavkoff is on a fixed contract, just like I am and others are, that is multi-year. So I'm pretty confident he was not part of that retention plan. It was really geared toward, other employees to make sure that, as the conference resizes moving forward, that we actually had people to put on all the championships and things like that to benefit our student athletes. And I think, there's nearly 200 staff members that are concerned about what their future is going to look like. So we have to balance their future along with making sure that we have a championship opportunities for all of our student athletes that they've come to expect as being in a Power 5 conference at Oregon State and Washington State. So I think that was the balance that we wanted to try and achieve, to make sure we had the people in place so that our student athletes aren't going, wow, this isn't what we came to expect being a part of the Pac-12.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, so we'll get through as many questions as possible. Next up, Travis Green. Go ahead, Travis.
Hi, guys. Thank you for doing this. Travis Green, Crimson News in Spokane. Pat, I know you said how obviously you'd like to have figure out the future right now. How much does everything that's going on legally right now impede you guys to move forward with creating, whether it be a rebuild of the Pac-12 or join another conference?
Well, clarity on the governance piece does create the best pathway. And all we're asking is just an affirmation of the agreed upon bylaws. But that'll set its course on whatever time frame the courts have. But it is a critical step because it'll, for us to make probably the most important decisions. And I think, as President Murthy said, we want to control our own fate. The two schools are the two remaining schools in the Pac-12. Based on the bylaws, the two schools should be able to dictate what that future looks like, and the legal action is obviously a critical step in that direction.
Okay, next question comes from Keith Oso. Keith, go ahead.
Hey, Julian Minnesota, actually here at KXLY. This one is for either President Schultz or Pat. What you mentioned how the legal situation impedes any decision making. So what can be done right now?
I mean, a lot of scenario planning, a lot of prep work. I mean, don't take the pause because of the legal action as anything as a reflection of work not going on. I mean, we have both universities across the board, from general counsels, CFOs, athletic directors, across the line, have been working to just really just put as much information together as we try to scenario plan and keep as many options open. But I mean, time is going to be a factor, but we also need to make sure that we're positioned correctly, and the legal piece is the first step in being positioned correctly.
I would say too that we got multiple things going in parallel, and I think sometimes people tend to think it's sequential. You got to get the legal stuff done, and then you'll have conversations with a potential partner. We're doing them at the same time, and some of the possible landing spots for our schools, they want to know what assets look like, what liabilities look like, what baggage we might have, what benefits we might have. And I think sometimes people think you sit down and have one conversation with somebody over an hour and it's all done. These are going to be conversations because of the complexity of the legal, fiscal issues, scheduling, all of those kind of things that I think are just going to take weeks and not, one or two quick conversations. So we're going to continue to do that. And look, at the end of the day, we've got to do stuff that's mutually beneficial for both our schools and potential conference partners, media partners, and all those things. So we're going to make our case, they're going to make their case, and we're going to find some middle ground on an awful lot of things. End of the day, though, my responsibility, like Jaythe's, is to our own institution, making sure that we're optimizing our opportunities, and that's also going to take some time. So again, emphasize patience, and I know people want to know all the details, but some of the things like around our legal strategy, appropriately, we have to be a little bit silent on, so that we're not broadcasting, here's what we hope to do. And I know people want to know more, but we're just going to continue to be diligent and thoughtful in moving ahead.
All right, our next question comes from Austin Getz. Go ahead, Austin.
Thank you. This is for Pat and Scott. Just wondering, some of the conversations that you've had with student athletes, what are some maybe concerns or anxieties they've shared? And, is there any, I wouldn't say a rush, but any reason to hope to hurry this decision along, as some of them have to make the decision whether they want to, stay with the universities or pursue something at another university?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that first. And we have had continuous dialogue with our student athlete leadership. And some of the things that rise to the top in our conversations as it relates to concerns. One is traveling across the country, something they don't want to do. The other thing is playing at the highest level. They came here to win and compete at a national level, and we are a national program. So competing at the very highest level, as it relates to angst around when decisions are made, certainly we're well aware of the transfer portal windows and the times and dates of things. Any clarity that we can have prior to that is of great importance to us, for sure. But I'll tell you what I'm seeing and what our coaches are seeing, and that's our student athletes currently are just locked in. They're locked into their competition. They're locked into class starting here in another week, as we're a semester school here at Oregon State. So I'm really proud of their focus, letting us tend to the challenges that we're dealing with while they're laser focused on what they're doing.
And I'll just add, and I'm guessing it's similar on the Oregon State campuses. Our student athletes love their institution. They are who they are, and they're wired the way they are because at their core, they came here because they wanted to experience the full Washington State student athlete experience, which is also competing at the highest levels. And I know our athletes want to graduate with Washington State degrees. They've made that clear to me. They understand that the near future is going to be very different. I remind them, and we've talked about it. It's going to be different, but we're gonna be okay. And we just gotta figure out a way to move forward. But our student athletes love their institution and they want to leave here with Washington State degrees. And and to Scott's point, they're here because they want to do something unique and different. And they wanted to be a part of this experience. And it's why both programs have performed so well, not only this year, but in recent history.
All right, next question from
Thank you.
Chris Heaney. Chris, go ahead.
Yes, for Pat and Scott, how realistic is the possibility of a 2-team conference next year? If it comes to that, does that impact automatic qualifier spots for postseason tournaments?
If you had asked me how realistic would have been a few months ago that the Pac-12 dissolved, or the membership as we knew it, you may get the same answer. So we're just trying to keep as many options open as possible. We're trying to make sure that we're positioned correctly, and we'll tackle those options at the appropriate time. But how realistic is college sports right now is another question. So we're just going to keep all of our options open, and when it's the time when we have all the information, we'll make some decisions.
Nothing to add really to that.
Okay, time for 2 more questions. Next one is Amanda. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Amanda from the Spokesman Review. My question is to the 2 presidents. How essential is the Pac-12 to the future of WSU and Oregon State as a whole and as educational institutions?
Well, I mean, there's no question that, we were in a really good conference. Certainly, OSU's been a part of the Pac-12 we were one of the 4 charter members, so our connection's really important. And this is a 108-year conference. I mean, it's an old conference, and we've been a part of it for a very long time. So it's a deep part of our identity. So there's no question about the loss that's felt. And the schools in the conference were great schools, and they were great partners in academics and research, and that will certainly be missed. But I'm also confident that we'll find other partners and other identities, because as schools, we are fundamentally strong. And from that will come creativity, from that will come partnerships, from that will come research results, and top academics. So yes, so the future is not what the past was, but there is a good future for us. No question about it.
I would say I agree with JT's comments. On the positive side of the ledger, we've got to map our own pathway and can't let the conference affiliation affect what we do for Washington residents. I have not yet talked to many faculty who came and said, hey, I came because you're a member of the Pac-12. It's not, people could be sports fans, and we do have a lot of our faculty that support our student athletes, but that's not the reason somebody chose to come and establish a career at Washington State. I don't see the National Science Foundation not funding research that we're doing because of that. So I think, the initial reaction is it's going to just affect everything at the institution. Now there's the unknown, and some of the unknowns are, our students, when they choose which school they're going to go to, have a variety of factors. And to me, one of the things that's important is when we determine what next year is going to be looking like from athletics, is we need to make sure that we tell our students, the people on the field may be different, but you're still going to have a football Saturday in Giza Field. You're still going to, go and have a packed house for volleyball, and these different kind of aspects of the Cougar experience, or the equivalent experience that is unique to being in Corvallis and being an Oregon State student. So I think if we just sit and wring our hands and go, it's going to be different, we can let it impact us more. I think we've got to be pretty aggressive about going out and saying, folks, there's a lot of aspects that will change, but I still think the overall experience that a student's going to get is not going to feel diminished or minimized or things like that. And it's up to us to really make sure that that's the case. And our fans and families and alumni are all going through a little bit of grief and anger and all those things. But if I've seen nothing else the last 2 weeks after our successful, first round of our legal strategy, people pulled together. And I think that's what we're going to ask our fan base to do, is pull together. I'm not sure who's going to be on the football field in the fall besides us and who are playing, but we need you to come out. We need to support us, need to support those student athletes who are still going to be working their asses off to win in the classroom and on the field. And they really need our support.
Yeah, let me add to that. I mean, we've all got to understand how fundamentally strong both these institutions are. I mean, this year we've got record enrollments. This is the highest enrollment that OSU's ever had, right? 11.5% over last fall. I mean, that's amazing. This year we posted record research funding, all right? $480 million, just short of $500 million. For a university without a medical school, that's completely amazing. That's a good number. All right, so there are strong successes as a university, and those are going to continue. They're going to continue for us, and they're going to continue for WSU.
Okay, our final question today comes from Noah Chath. Go ahead, Noah.
All right, thanks, guys. This is Noah Chath from KTVZ in Central Oregon, trying to end with a good one. There's obviously a lot of different possibilities on the table, right? Could be joining the Mountain West, having the Mountain West become the Pac-12, being a two-team conference for this grace period, even doing this, this two-conference relegation sort of idea. If everything were to go your way from here on out, and you had your pick of the litter, what would be these two universities' preferred option moving forward?
Who wants to take that? Well, I can tell you that the preferred option is to play at the highest level, to give our students and student athletes every academic and athletic chance that we can possibly get for them. And we'll be evaluating all of these options through that lens. I mean, that's really where, the way we're approaching it. It's first and foremost student, student, student. And it's their health and their opportunity and their well-being that's going to be the thing that drives us as we evaluate the options that you're talking about.
I think both athletic programs are on a course and a trajectory that we're very conscientious of, and it's upward. And the environment is dynamic. Where we're at on September 21st is very different than where we're at on August 3rd. So, to put scenario planning like you had just said, yeah, those may seem like options that we may have to pick from in the moment, but we're not picking them in the moment right now. We're going to keep doing our due diligence. We're going to keep positioning ourselves, and whatever decisions we make are going to keep both institutions, both athletic programs specifically, on the same upward trajectory.
I just add, and Jay, if you said it, but we're using our guiding principles to help us make those decisions. And student athlete experience is really important, including playing at the highest level and their wellness. And those things will be taken into consideration to get to the best possible place we can.